You may not know this, but I'm a cop. No, not an undercover cop, because if I was undercover, I'd let you know. No, I probably wouldn't. I knew ever since I was a kid I wanted to be a cop. It was my dream. It's all I wanted to do. I was so convinced they could help people, make a difference in the world. But I was pretty naive as a cop, or as a kid, I was pretty naive. I thought being a cop was as simple as you arrest a bad guy, you take him to jail, and all the good people will be okay. Then again, I was pretty childish as a kid too, because I thought that I was Batman. That was only when I was a kid. I don't believe that. Okay, just so you know, not only do I believe I'm Batman, I know I'm Batman. I have been practicing that voice for years. Do you know how bad I wanted to say that in the public? Best day ever. I fulfilled my dream of becoming a full-time police officer on March 1st, 1993, when I walked through the front door of the Newtown Police Department. And as I stepped into the foyer, I was overwhelmed by this feeling. It actually stopped me. I couldn't move, and I heard this voice say, "This is where you will change the world." Of course, the voice doesn't tell you how or when that will happen. I didn't find out until 21 years later, after seeing an entire family, an entire generation die from drugs. A mother, she abused prescription pills and alcohol. She had 3 sons. The youngest, Josh, was shot and killed by crack cocaine. The oldest, Johnny, overdosed on heroin and fentanyl. Then the last of the brothers, his name was Charles, but everybody called him Chucky. He and I had quite a unique relationship. He actually set my personal car on fire in the police department parking lot. He was upset another officer had arrested him. He mistook my car for his, poured gasoline on it, and torched it. I can smile about it now, and I know the other officer, he would thought that that was the best mistake Chucky ever made. I didn't think that. And I remember one time I was sitting in traffic on Main Street, and I saw Chucky walking down the street. He walked right past me. He was drinking a beer and smoking a joint. I couldn't believe it. I got out of the car and I said, "Chucky, what are you doing?" He goes, "Tom, you're always messing with me. Why are you always picking on me?" I said, "Chucky, you're walking down the street drinking a beer and smoking a joint." He got this little smirk on his face and he said, "Okay, Tom, you got me." I got a call from one of my officers a couple weeks before Thanksgiving in 2014. He said, "Hey, Chief, Chucky overdosed. We found him in the street. He was brought back with Narcan. He's down here at the station. He's crying, saying he doesn't want to die. How can we get him help?" At the time, we didn't have the Heroin Coalition, and we didn't have a lot of resources or connections being a small community. But I knew that Chucky wasn't just the last of a family. He was the last of a generation. I said, "You got to find some kind of treatment. Take him to the hospital. Whatever it takes, even if we have to pay for it, we'll figure it out." About an hour later, the officer called back and said, "Hey, Chief, Chucky's refusing any help. What do you want us to do?" Having a better understanding of addiction now than I did then, it's almost as if the fear of succeeding can be just as powerful as the familiarity of despair. And being a cop, especially back then, often the only tools that you have to deal with addiction is a gun, taser, handcuffs, or jail. I said, "We got to keep Chucky alive for at least one more night, so take him to jail." We accomplished our mission, keeping Chucky alive for at least one more night. The next morning, he got out, overdosed, and died. In my career, I'd seen an entire family, an entire generation lost to addiction. But it wasn't just them that were impacted. Each one of those brothers had kids. The oldest had 5. They were being raised by a grandparent, and 3 of them struggled with substance use disorder. 3 generations impacted by addiction in my small community. I have to be honest, and this may sound strange, but I struggled when Chucky died. The enormity of such a generational loss hit me really hard. My naive dream of believing I could save the world was shattered. I couldn't even save a family. I had to accept the fact that I was more human than superhero. And that night, my worlds collided, being a cop and a human being. And when that happens, there's nothing left but helplessness. And as a first responder, as a police officer, I, like many others, have felt helpless before, but I'd never felt it at that level. Trying to process it all, I began to write. That's how I cope. I wrote about the calls I'd been on, what I'd seen, how I'd felt. I wrote about the family, the loss of the family, the loss of a generation, the loss of Chucky. I wrote that despite all he had done in the 21 years I dealt with him, I never forgot that kid. I never forgot that at one point he was a kid just like any other. The empathy I gave him as a kid and the empathy I give him now is not for the loss of a drug addict, but for the loss of a kid. I wanted to send it to the paper because I'd realized I'd written an op-ed, but I was so afraid to do it. Because I had written it as a chief, but I was so vulnerable as a human being. I thought that if I did that, it might bring more awareness to the public about addiction. But this isn't something that a chief's supposed to do. We don't talk about the things that we see, we feel. We're not supposed to champion causes. I knew that if I sent that to the paper, I'd be judged and criticized. I would lose friends and peers. It would have a negative impact on my career. I knew that if I sent that, no matter what I wanted out of my life or career would be changed forever. And as my finger hovered over the send button, just as it did 21 years prior, that voice came back and it said, "This is where you will change the world." And in that moment, I had to make a decision. Do I lead with my career or do I lead with humanity? I chose humanity and hit send. All of those bad things I thought would happen, they did. But there were things I could have never imagined. I became this unlikely advocate, a voice for changing the way we view and deal with addiction. I was even called the face of heroin, which I don't know what that says about my face. It's like, oh man. I joined other community members helping to form the Hamilton County Heroin Coalition. Traveled overseas and spoke about addiction. Interviewed by media from all around the world. I testified in front of a U.S. Senate subcommittee about the impact of carfentanil in the United States. My life, career, and work with the opiate epidemic has been archived in the National Law Enforcement Museum. And I was invited by President Clinton to join him and other speakers at Johns Hopkins University. That event was webcast throughout the world. And after it was finished, a friend came up and said, "You gotta check out Twitter." So I got on Twitter and I looked and I saw what I had said was being shared all around the world. And I stood there and I thought, the voice was right. It came true. I was changing the world. But the more I reflected on it, I realized that I wasn't changing the world. What was changing the world was the everyday actions and interactions of people courageous enough to share their experiences. Parents who had lost a child to addiction yet somehow gathered the strength to start a foundation, helping others with substance use disorder get the treatment they need. All in the hopes no other family would feel the pain that they did. A father who others only saw his daughter as a drug addict and a prostitute, and although he didn't condone her behavior, he only saw her as he did the first time he ever laid eyes on her, as his princess. He and I became good friends. And I watched every day as he worked to save her life. So determined, he would walk the streets to try to find her. And even as he was dying of cancer, he taught me the true meaning of unconditional love. I'm telling you, this man came from the heavens. Because I had read what the word grace meant in the religions, and he didn't just personify it, he was grace. People in recovery, I'm honored to call my friends. They have had to overcome such immense challenges, immense physical, emotional challenges to achieve recovery. They now lead by example, inspire others, help them so they too can achieve recovery. They are some of the bravest people I know because they had nothing other than they had no choice but to be so vulnerable there was nothing left but honesty. It was all of them that taught me to stand up in front of the world, to tell the world, it is time we change the way we view and deal with addiction. We must see the person before we notice the addiction. And understand we cannot punish addiction out of someone. Instead, should treat it as a chronic mental medical health condition it is. And never can we discount the one because it is never just the one that suffers. There's always a mother, father, brother, sister, son, or daughter who suffers along with them. Never just the one, but the many. I have been asked, how many times should we save someone? Once, twice, 3 times? How many chances should we give them? My answer, at least 1 million. There's this parable used in the world of addiction called a starfish parable. It's a story of a young boy who's walking along the beach where thousands of starfish have washed up. He knows that if he doesn't get them back in the ocean, they'll die. So he picks up a starfish, throws it in the ocean, picks up another, throws it in the ocean, picks up another, throws it in the ocean. An old man watching this can't believe what he's seeing. He goes up to him and says, "Young man, what are you doing? There's too many. You're wasting your time. You can't save them all." The young boy picks up a starfish, throws it in the ocean, looks at the old man and says, "I saved that one." It is in our humanity we find hope. And hope doesn't determine when it intervenes. It only gives us the wisdom to persevere. In that op-ed, I wrote about one of the daughters of the oldest brother. She was introduced to drugs at a very young age. She's still young, but has nearly 2 decades of dealing with substance use disorder. But a family, police department, a judge, advocates in the community never gave up hope. She had been saved many times, given many chances, and it was a good thing. Because a few weeks ago, Shelley stood up in the front of a group of peers and strangers, telling her story as she graduated from a long-term treatment program. She now has an apartment, a job, and is in active recovery. She is breaking the family tradition of addiction. There will be moments in your life when you'll have to make a decision. Will you lead with your career, profession, job title, the uniform, costume, mask that you show others? Or, if you want to change the world, then I leave you with this challenge. Lead with your humanity. Thank you.